So we're here at Morris Lubricants Racing with some of our ambassadors. We're going to be chatting to Guy Martin, to Lydia Walmsley and to Dave Jenkins. And I want to start, guys, by talking a little bit about speed and skill and bravery, which you all have in absolutely abundance. I'll start with you, Guy, if I may. Big question for me, what's the fastest you have ever gone for somebody that's got all of your experience and all of those things that you've done?
That's simple, really. I did 282 mile an hour about 6 weeks ago at Machrihanish Airfield. That's what I'm mucking about with now. I'm trying to be the first man to do 300 mile an hour in a mile on a sit-on motorbike. No one's ever done 300. Well, no one's ever done 300 mile an hour full stop on a sit-on motorbike, ever. So I'm just trying to do it in a mile because I can't. Yeah, I don't want to go to the salt flats.
That must bring a raft of different challenges on itself. You know, to try and do that kind of speed, you know, you've got to be enormously aerodynamic. You've got the engineering on the bike must be enormously different as well.
Yeah, it's more of a like aerodynamics is a big part of it, but I'm trying to mask lack of aerodynamic efficiency with horsepower. We've got wheelbarrows full of horsepower that we can't use, so we're just trying to mask, because having a fantastic coefficient of drag means a load of other issues in the window of opportunity. We've got such a small, there's probably only 2 days a year in which you can run. Have all these big fairings, and you can only run them for a very small, like by me, only a couple of days a year. You know, at that 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning, because it's so influenced by outside winds and thermals. And so what I'm trying to do, you'll see the bike later on. I'm trying to take all the fairings off and just trying to mask the problem with loads of horsepower.
I think it's fair to say most record attempts are done. You were talking about very early in the morning. Most records attempts are always usually done very early in the morning, as you all know, with the things that you were trying to do with Triumph as well in the past. You know, when barometric pressure is low, where as you say, you know, very little air movement and wind.
The main reason for that is you need to, because I thought, cold air, more power. Well, that is sort of a gain of running first thing in the morning, but the problem is I make too much horsepower, so that cold air isn't really what I want. I want warmer because I don't want the horsepower. But the reason for running first thing in the morning is you don't want the sun to have warmed the land up and then the land reflecting the heat back to the atmosphere. That's what causes unwanted thermals. So we've all this to learn, and that's why I've ended up going to Machrihanish, because I need the option to be able to run first thing in the morning. And me and my dad was sat there in the back of a van at 5 o'clock in the morning waiting for the sun to come up. But but it's great. It's great. The lads up there have been fantastic. When we run, there's a few other places we run, but the only option I've got to run first thing in the morning is Machrihanish.
So 280 miles an hour then.
282, get it right.
282, sorry.
Get it right.
So Lydia, same question to you. I'm guessing you've maybe not gone quite as quick as Guy.
I can't quite compete with 282 mile an hour, but the quickest I've gone is Thruxton at 119 miles per hour. So in a 1.6 litre Cooper, that's quite good going.
And in the Coopers, you know, you're sort of alluding to the mini challenge that you've been racing in. You've still got to conclude your season for this year. But Thruxton is one of those typical old British airfield circuits, slipstreaming the key. So I'm guessing even that top speed was in a tow, was it?
Yes, it definitely was, in qualifying, I think, when everyone was trying to get a tow off each other. It's the first time that I've ever raced at Thruxton. It's definitely a new experience. It's like NASCAR racing. It's the most amazing racing I've ever had. Nothing can compare, I don't think. It was amazing. The tow was phenomenal. I've never experienced anything like it. It was brilliant.
Just talk us through, you know, we talk about the tow, but maybe for people that aren't aware, you know, what is that? What does it do? And as you say, the effect is amazing, but talk us through the effect. Well,
it's basically the car in front breaking the air for you and giving you less air particles, I guess, and the cars behind go quicker than the one in front. If you're leading the race at Thruxton, you're probably not going to be leading it by the end of the lap, because the tow is just absolutely massive. It gives you miles an hour up on the car in front. It's phenomenal. And I was having cars coming by me from about 10 car lengths back. It was crazy. By the start of the straight, you had a gap, and then by the end of it, they were overtaking you into the chicane. It was brilliant, but it makes really close racing, and you don't know who's ever going to win, because if you go into the last lap leading, you're probably not going to win the race.
I agree. I think Thruxton is one of those circuits, whereas if you're leading coming out of Church, which is the fast corner, the right-hander at the back, that brings you up that final straight and into the chicane, if you're leading coming out of that, you're not going to win, are you?
Yeah, well, the mini challenge has 30 minis as well. They're all going the same speed, so you could go from first to 10th really quickly. So, it was difficult, but so much fun.
So was that 119?
119.
Okay, 282, 119. Dave?
Definitely a question for Guy, that one, wasn't it, really? No, I probably really can't answer this in case my mum ever ends up watching this. No, in the truck, we're limited to 100 miles an hour.
You are, yeah.
And the trucks are geared so that's where the peak power is with them, and it's strictly policed. But we've done 1 or 2 record attempts over the years, and supported record attempts where we've been on airfields with the truck and done stuff. And I think 131 mile an hour, was that what? Remember when we were at Bruntingthorpe, Guy, the day we did the practice for the bike record?
How long ago was that? 6 years ago, 5 or 6 years ago?
2012.
Bloody hell, a year ago.
It wasn't. 2013, so 7 years ago.
Yeah.
So 131 mile an hour, I think we saw somewhere one day. But normally, in normal racing, then no, we're actually limited to 100 miles an hour, which lots of people say, oh, I bet that's really boring. But it's not, because you've still got to accelerate to that speed, so you need to optimise the line from the last corner and optimise where you press the throttle, and you've still got to brake down from it, so the point at which you press the brakes is also critical. It's just that because we are so saturated with horsepower, we don't gain anything from the toe like Lydia was just talking about, because we've still got power to keep going, so the toe doesn't work for us.
You were talking about, you're limited to 100 miles per hour, and some of that is for safety reasons as well, because your trucks are, 5.5 tons travelling at 100 miles an hour? That's a lot of kinetic energy if something went wrong.
That is the problem. And back in the mid-80s, the trucks had only got 700 or 800 horsepower back then, and they were recording speeds of 125 mile an hour on the old Hanger Straight at Silverstone, and that was when the 100 mile an hour speed limit came in with racing trucks.
And I suppose that's, again, that's now evolved in the way that they police that. You say that it's quite strictly policed. It used to be done on an old tachograph chart, didn't it? A wax piece of paper. It's all GPS now, I guess. Originally,
when I started, the tachographs had been modified. So instead of taking 24 hours to get a rotation in the tachograph, they went round once an hour. So they could literally take the tacho out at the end of the race and look at the peaks and analyse the speed. But it's all GPS now. And there's various rules about how much percentage you're allowed to overspeed for what period of time. So actually they don't come on to 100 mile an hour speed limit. They have peaks and troughs in the speed limit to make sure that it averages out inside the rules. So there's some clever things go on with the engine mapping. And a couple of years ago we were overspeeding up to sort of 102 or 103 and then dropping back down to 98 for a period of time. But it was mapping out at 100 miles an hour. But if you got your spike right, it was almost like a push-to-pass button, because at the end of the straight, you could just run on and make a length.
Can you control that then? Can you override it if you wanted, right, I want a mile an hour?
Yeah, you could. You could sit there with a flatline speed control where the engine notes sort of bum, 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 and then you could have a little burst at the end. So if you needed to make 2 meters to get
like
on
a DRS.
But is it cheating or is it exploiting the rules? It came from the engine builders, and that was. But it has been outlawed now, so they come on to a flat line at the top speed.
Fascinating stuff, guys. I've got to say, fascinating. So we've got the fastest speeds, and we know Guy's won that one. And with speed comes bravery, but also a little bit of fear as well. So again, you've experienced so many different things with your record-breaking attempts, and as well as your road racing career as well, and the speeds that you would have been doing on the TT. What's the scariest moment you've ever had?
I'd probably say it, 112.94. I'm shit, man, I've crap memory, right? But never forget riding on the push bike behind Dave's truck, 112.94. Like, genuinely, no, that's nothing. The only thing that measures up to that is trying to hang on to my bike. Anything beyond 260 mile an hour is an absolute blow your bloody mind. But yeah, I've never, I said it in the winter times, I felt like I was going to pull the muscles off my bones. I was having to pedal that hard to stay on the back of Dave's truck on Pendine Sands.
Just to interrupt Guy with this one, but the reason for that, it was all completely planned, completely calculated, everything, and then like the best made plans. First of all, we shouldn't really been doing it on the beach, but we couldn't find anywhere the good enough, long enough tarmac circuit to try it on. So Guy and I were on the beach super early that morning, looking and assessing the ideal conditions. I'd been up and down to the beach, tested all sorts of things, the bike on the beach, the truck on the beach, a motocross bike behind the truck on the beach, every sort of possible combination. But actually on the day of filming, it took a long time for the crew to get ready and for everything to get sorted out. And the wind and the sun had been on the surface all day. And it was like Guy being in a shot blasting machine, because the screen on the back of the truck made such a huge hole in the air for Guy to be in. He was in a negative pressure environment behind the truck, and all the sand and stuff was coming up. But the one thing that was ultimately, and I'll never forget this, but we were following the coastline. And Guy was effectively blind because he was so tight in behind the truck, behind this great screen. And I've sort of got a few degrees of deviation on to follow the coastline as we've mapped this track out up the beach. And as I've sort of turned the steering wheel, Guy's almost come out of the slipstream because he's come slightly offset behind the truck. And I see him disappearing behind. So I've sort of lifted off. He's got sucked in and doshed me from behind. I got a camera watching. So I've squirted back on the throttle again. So instead of having this super organised, consistent, we're going like this. And at one time I look out the mirror and he's knocking this bike about between his knees like you would on an old grifter going up a hill at 30, except we're doing 105 mile an hour at this point. And he stood on the bike knocking it about between his knees to try and catch up with me. But this has been going on for as long as it's taken me to tell this story. So at 110 mile an hour, you know, in 30 seconds, we're another mile further up the road. And we ended up on, when we actually achieved the 112 mile an hour, we were on an uncharted piece of beach, because we'd walked we'd driven and coned out 5 miles of beach. And because we were so determined to do the record, we actually ended up on an uncharted piece of beach.
Yeah, I was blowing out, I can tell you.
And we'd been going for far too long as well. So I was the bloke that nearly killed Guy Martin.
But I tell you, that's the most scared I've been. That's.
Was it a mixture of the speed and the distance, and also, you know, your little contact patch on the bike that you were on, you know, on a surface of sand as well? Was it a combination of all of those things, do you think, Guy?
Yeah, just that pendulum effect of, like Dave seeing that I was dropping off, so he slowed down, but then I sped up and got sucked back in, and it was just, and then the sand, and then the slight deviation, trying to follow the coastline, and just the combination of everything, and me having a pedal like bloody hell, man. I genuinely said I thought I was going to rip the muscles off me legs. I've never pedalled.
And that's with the really special gearing on that bike and the frame and everything.
Massive gearing, massive gearing.
Is that a never again?
Never say never. Never say never. Never say never.
But just to interrupt Guy again, for a bloke that was terrified and never say never, he says to me, we were fairly disappointed with 112.94 mile an hour on the day. And so Guy's like, right, let's line up and let's go again. And the TV people are all over it. No, absolutely not. It's far too dangerous. Guy's like, stuff that. Let's just go anyhow. You know, so he couldn't have been that scared, I'm sure.
Lydia, you must have had a few moments out there as well.
I broke my leg when I was 10 years old in a go-karting accident at Ella Park.
That was tib and fib, wasn't it?
Yes, it was both. Yeah, I did it properly. Yeah, and then I had to have surgery on my eyelid to remove pieces of rubber from the tyre wall, because I'd hit my head on the tyre wall, and then I had to have that surgically removed. So I did a good job of it, but I had about a year out because of all the complications with it. But yeah, I mean, it didn't put me off. I wasn't, I was raring to go again, so yeah, it didn't worry me. But I've rolled at Knockhill in a Saxo and pretty much wrote that off. But I'd probably say the roll was probably scarier than the break.
I mean, you're by far the youngest. No disrespect to these guys, but you're by far the youngest that's here as well. So, parents as well, they're watching on when all this goes on as well. Yeah,
my poor mum, she kind of hides behind the vending machine. She just sort of peeks out from the side of it to see what's going on. She's quite a nervous watcher, but I think Dad says that it makes his heart pump more watching me race than it ever did when he used to race. So I think it's like a painful enjoyment for them.
And do you wear a heart monitor? I know some racing drivers do, just to see what your heart rate's at.
No, I think I'd rather not know what my heart rate's doing, to be honest.
See what that scary spike.
No, none of that. Just I know it must pump pretty quick though.
It's hard work out there. Dave, you've had some scary moments. I'm sure there's lots of stories you can't tell us, but tell by your eyes there are. Scariest moment?
I think we need to try not to be scared, don't we? That's the whole point. We're supposed to be in control, aren't we? But I think one of the most notable ones in recent years, once again, was a record attempt we were doing. It was 5 years ago at Elvington, and a tremendous guy, Mike Newman, and heads up a charity called Speed of Sight. And he goes about doing extraordinary records. He's blind, he's born blind, he's got a passion for motorsport, and he goes about doing extraordinary records to fund his charity. And we were at Elvington. Once again, we'd been through every stage of how this was going to work. And the net result was he drove the truck at 125 miles an hour on his own, in the truck, completely blind. And I was behind in a BMW M3 or M1 chase car saying left a bit, right a bit, keeping him pointing in the right direction. And we'd been through every stage of every possible combination, and Mike and I had made friends and we bonded leading up to this, and there was one rule, and it was he wouldn't think for himself and he would do exactly what I told him to do. So I'm trying to be super calm, and it's the day of the record, and Gina Campbell was there, and you know, some really famous people. It was this big record thing, local news, and we eventually get to the record attempt, so off we set, and it's like, okay, Mike, off you go, and pop it into first gear and drive forwards. And I've got a radio link to him, and second gear, Mike, and press the throttle, and left a bit, Mike, and so it goes on until we get the truck in top gear, and I'm behind in the chase car. And press the throttle, Mike, please, come on, let's go now, and press the throttle. What I had not taken into account for was that I hadn't got him to speed the truck up enough before he popped it in top gear. So we're doing about 30 or 40 miles an hour, and I press the throttle, Mike, and left a bit. And press the throttle now, Mike. So he's now, at this point, he's got his foot buried through the boards. And the truck's still not going because it's off boost. Anyhow, all of a sudden, it boosts up and it goes. So, and it's just off like a robber's dog. And I'm like, left a bit, Mike, and gently now then, Mike. And meanwhile, and the truck's disappearing over the crest of the hill at Elvington. And the bloke in the M3 that's driving me is like down one gear, down two gears, down three gears, like to try and stoke the M3 up so we could catch up with him. And I think we stopped and we did the record and everything went to plan. And that was one of those days when I really reflected on that afterwards and think, that probably did just scare me. Yeah, so yeah, that was my scariest moment, watching my pride and joy with a very brave, unsighted man disappear over the horizon at 120 plus mile an hour. Yeah. Well, whilst I was supposed to be in control.
Fantastic stuff. Great to hear from our Morris Lubricants Racing ambassadors. But keep your eye out on social media and on our website for more content.